I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Historic District Commission meeting. My name is Marguerite Carnell. I'm the chair, and I'm glad to have you with me tonight. So I'm just going to take care of a couple housekeeping things first. If you are not speaking, please stay muted until you are ready to speak. To members of the public, there will be a chance to speak, but please wait until the commission opens the public hearing portion of the meeting. And to the commissioners, of course, please speak one at a time. So we have one application before us this evening. So I will read the application, and then I will ask the applicant to present their project and invite members of the public, if there are any here, to speak. So let me start with a roll call of the commissioners who are present. Let's see, Julie Carmelick.
Here.
Here. Heather Getz.
Here.
Diane Mead.
Here.
Patty Hippa.
Here.
And Peter Adamowitz.
Here.
I'm sorry. Thank you. And I'll note that Peter is an alternate, but I will be appointing him to be a full voting member of the commission tonight. Okay. So the application that is before us this evening, application 20-7, CRS Landscape and Excavation applicant, Marshall Epstein, owner for certificate of appropriateness to dismantle an approximately 30-foot by 80-foot barn on the property located at 25 East Weatog Street. So would the applicant like to tell us about your project?
Yeah, go ahead. TJ, I think, is going to represent Rosedale Farms, so I think he'll be speaking first.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, thank you for taking this up this evening. We appreciate it. I represent Rosedale. Also on the call, you can see Marshall Epstein, who's the proprietor and operator and farmer of Rosedale, and Jeremy Varial, who's our contractor, who's been engaged for purposes of a demolition, for a dismantling of the barn as soon as we can get there. I want to check and make sure that you got some pictures that we provided to you today. It's entitled Rosedale Barn to be Dismantled, Simsbury Historic District Commission, November 5th, 2020. Did you receive those, Madam Chairman?
I know that the town received them, and I just went to the Dropbox and found them. I do not know if all of the commissioners have had a chance to see them. So perhaps we could do a screen share.
If I knew how, I would. I don't know if Mike can do that.
Question, are these different than the pictures that accompanied the original application?
We have some additional pictures. We felt it was important to show the interior condition of the barn and the one of the sides that wasn't showing the other pictures. They're similar, but they aren't the same.
So they're just in addition to?
They're in addition to, but they do show the condition of the
I will try to screen share. Sorry, I got booted in and out of Zoom right here. So let me, I'll open up the presentation right now.
And while Mike's doing that, we also included in the transmittal sections from the Simsbury Community Plan and Development 2017, which singles out the East Weatog Historic District, as well as Rosedale Farms, is one of the more important places in Simsbury, and most of you are neighbors, so there's not much known to you on that. But I thought it was important to indicate that the Rosedale Farm is singled out and treasured by Simsbury as a gateway, and also as an operating, working farm, which and its activities therein. It does have historic structures. All the structures are not historic, but including the shed we seek to dismantle. But the house, the farmhouse on the property, was built in 1850. One of the other barns was built around the same time, and one of the barns was built in 1900. So there are very historic elements of the barn, of the Rosedale farm, but I don't think that this barn is part of it. This is the southern view of the barn. This is looking from the east. So that's the east side of the barn and the south side of the barn. Next. Once again, the same, and it shows that view of the barn. It's in very significant disrepair. The barn, the shed was built in 1955 after the flood. It was put together as they did then hastily, and we're surprised it's still lasting. Next. This is the interior of the barn. Our contractor tells us it's important to note that those are 2x4s, not any elaborate historic post and beam. It has a dirt floor, and it's in pretty rough shape. Next. Another interior shot of the barn. And I think one more. It's not habitable. It's not safe for normal or intense use. And we this is the facility that we wish to dismantle. There are some barn boards on the outside that maybe will have value to somebody. We'll try to repurpose anything that we can. And the plan is to, when it is disassembled and removed, we intend to grade, rake and loam and seed the area that it's on. Couple of things you should note about, and these slides on the plan of conservation development, you can review them in your time. But as I said, I just wanted you to see that they talk about Rosedale Farms, and they talk about how important it is and how important our historic building sites are. And Rosedale certainly embraces that and feels that, and they just hope that you see the difference between a obsolete aesthetically and operationally and every other way, a structure that the best use of may be to take it down, and that's what we seek to do. To go into the reasons for our application. The applications for disassembly and removal of the shed barn at the southeast corner of the Rosedale property. The structures from 1955 to 60, it's 2,500 square feet and in very poor condition. The applicant owns and operates one of Simsbury's special places defined and set out in the 2017 Plan of Conservation Development. Substantial portions of the property are under conservation and farmland protection with the Simsbury Land Trust and the United States Department of Agriculture. When the Land Trust made the acquisition of those rights, the United States Department of Agriculture found that the 18 inches alone were among the best Class AA soils for growing that you could find anywhere. The farm itself is 107 acres. You're all neighbors, so you all know what it is and where it is. But the facility is in the absolute southeastern corner of the property. It doesn't comply with zoning. It doesn't comply with current zoning. It encroaches on both the sideline and the front setback line. The current configuration doesn't conform to zoning. We believe that the building official is or may be concerned about the present dilapidated and disintegrating condition of the structure. And in our application process, I don't know where it went, but we did suggest that, or it was suggested to me that the building inspector maybe should take a look at it as part of this process as well. And I don't know what his determination is on that, but if he is going to look at it, we would be very acceptful and appreciative of that. We request a certificate of appropriateness for the following reason. It's not historic in the same manner and degree as the farm, which includes an 1835 farmhouse, I was wrong before, which is prevailing structure, and an 1850 barn and a 1900 shed. It's in disrepair and locationally and functionally obsolete. Restoration and reuse are not economically feasible. The deteriorating condition is a blight. The removal will enhance sight lines and traffic safety. That's a very significant concern there. Rosedale's, as a going business active farm and conservation property, will be aided and enhanced by the removal of this structure. So it's our position that less is more, and that with the removal of that structure, Rosedale Farms, which is a Simsbury treasure, will be enhanced, operate better and more safely. So we respectfully request your consideration of this. The historic district, I know you work diligently on it. It has very significant powers, but it also has responsibility. And I hope that you will have not only consideration of your power to try to say no to something, but also we hope that you'll have consideration to balance a broader need than just a single structure existing on the property. I have Jeremy Veriel here for any questions, and Marshall, and we very much appreciate your consideration. We'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donahue. I have some questions, and I'm sure other commissioners have questions as well. But I'd like to start out with this one. As I recall, there was an application that came before us. I cannot remember if it was last year or the year before, for a new roof for this building. Could either the applicant or Mike remind me of when that application was?
I believe that was 3 years ago now.
Was it 3 years? Okay. Okay. And at that time, the building was in, I presume, and this is a question, the building was in good enough condition and valuable to the applicant at that time that he was willing to invest in a new roof for that building. And I'm just wondering what's happened in the 3 years.
The factors, that building is nothing that the applicant intends or wishes to proceed on in any event. There's been continued deterioration in the building, which makes it deteriorates by the year and by the winter and by the season. The business has changed. The but the traffic consideration in and out has changed, and the values of having good site access north and south on the East Weetog Street is very considerable to them. The former application is nothing we're interested in. This is an application to demolish the structure.
Yes, I understand that, Mr. Donahue. I'm just trying to get a sense of what's changed. And it sounds like the business model has changed, and an increase of traffic is what you're saying is, I shop at Rosedale's often, and yes, I know that it's a difficult intersection there with that building.
I think that's fair to say that the change in the business model probably is the most significant factor, as you've identified.
And how is the building used now?
We're not very proud of it. We store stuff in it that's a lot of stuff that's, and sometimes beyond its useful life as well. But it's become it's lack of easy access in and out with the traffic patterns, interior traffic circulation patterns, the like. It's pretty much awaits dismantling, cleaning out and dismantling.
Okay. So I'd like to discuss next the date of the barn and its historic significance, both in the National Register district and also in the local historic district, on which is based on the National Register district. So I have the National Register nomination here in front of me, and what I have listed here for 25 East Weetog Street is an 1835 dwelling, a 1952 vegetable stand, a 1900 barn, and a 1900 tobacco shed, and then a 1960 shed. And my understanding is that this building is a former tobacco shed. And so I believe that this building dates to about 1900.
Oh, not that one. No, the other one, the one in the middle with the vines on it, was the one from 1900, and then 36 it blew off in the hurricane of 36, and that was restored at that time. This one was built later. This was built actually for, if you look in the, it was rented. I think it was actually built. I don't know if we built it or Colbro Tobacco, but my father rented the farm to Colbro during the early 50s and mid 50s. So they might have been part of that because they were raising tobacco on our property.
Okay.
So this is not the 1900 one, no. It's not my understanding, no.
The barn that is set further back, what was the purpose of that barn? Do you know what it was purpose built for?
Which one you're referring to?
The one that has the vines painted on it now?
That's a tobacco shed too.
That was a tobacco shed. Okay, so they both were. Okay. So I just want to speak a little bit about what the significance of agriculture and agricultural buildings are as documented in the National Register nomination. And I'll keep this brief and speak directly to the portions towards tobacco. So toward the end of the 19th century, broadleaf tobacco became an important cash crop. It needed careful storage near the growing fields, and the presence of tobacco sheds in the district documents, the importance of the crop. And then in terms of agriculture in general, and it's important to the district, the land and the people work together to form a community of exceptional longevity. Today, the houses and the fields continue to give the sense of place that can only be developed gradually over the centuries. The architecture of the houses and the agricultural function of the land constitute an entity that is a significant cultural resource. The continued use of the land over the centuries for agricultural purposes complements the historic architecture that has survived in well-preserved condition in shadow of the large city. And one more quick section. The farm buildings that accompany the houses also change over time in methods of construction, from heavy timber to balloon frame, and in some cases to concrete and glass. The multiplicity and variety of farm buildings in the district make them one of its chief resources. So I just want to state in terms of, that the National Register nomination is stating that the outbuildings are just as important as the farmhouses. It's really altogether the packages, including the land, that give them their value, including Rosedale.
Is that, may I make an inquiry?
Yeah, of course.
I don't understand. Are you saying that every building is as important as the other building?
So what I just stated there from the National Register nomination is stating that agricultural buildings are considered important and contributing resources in the National Register district. And now I want to turn to the point of the fact that this is a local historic district, which sees historic resources and their dates a little differently than the National Register. So in the local historic district, all buildings are considered contributing resources and are considered important. So whether this barn dates to 1900 or 1960, the way we would look at this is that it's a tobacco shed. It's a historic period because now it's 50 years or older. 1960 falls into that. It's a historic period building, and we would consider the fact that building does contribute to the historic character of Rosedale Farm. So I just wanted to make that point, and I'm sure other commissioners have questions for the applicant.
Thank you, Marguerite. I do have a couple questions about the stated condition of the barn. Could you or somebody provide a little more information on what you're referring to when you talk about its poor condition? What is it? What is the state of the barn? What are the issues surrounding the barn's condition?
Marshall, did you want to take that up, or would you like me to?
Well, I know. I mean, again, there's a couple of things. If you look at that one side, all the sills are all rotten. Some of the middle sills are rotten. Both the roofs have to be reinforced. We've had tar paper on one side for many years. The other side has blown off in regards to, so a whole roof has to be reconstructed. And the way tobacco sheds are, if you went around town, you could see probably, I don't know how many have blown over in the last 30, 40 years. I know we had one in 1990 something, blew over, and over at Roscoe Farm that we have on the northern part of the property line. So, I mean, they're not the most well-built structures. And a good heavy wind can blow them over at any time, even a well-built one. So it is a danger to the area, and it's not getting any better. So yeah, it has a lot of disrepair, and you don't see too many tobacco sheds being rebuilt. I mean, a lot of times you'll see brand new ones, which are more modern and more secure in how they're structured. So I think it's a combination of how it was built, very quickly probably, and then of course the wear and tear over the years.
I think that, I don't know what your time frame is for acting upon this, but if you don't act upon it tonight, I think that Marcia would love to have any of you commissioners to go to a site visit and to view this farm and the other tobacco shed to see the relative values of the two and how one is something that's pretty important and one of them is in significant disrepair. The corners aren't straight, the walls aren't straight. It's a fall down structure.
Has it been evaluated by a structural engineer who has expertise in historic buildings?
I don't know. If you want to evaluate by a structural engineer, we'll get one to evaluate it if that's an issue and a question for you. I'm pleased with that question. I'd also be pleased if somebody looked at the relative economic values and saw that it would be a significant detriment and a real encumbrance to the operations of Rosedale to have to do anything or continue to suffer with that structure.
If possible, I do have a question, Patty Hippa.
Hi, Patty.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I live basically across the street from Rosedale's and the building leans. It leans. I was just wondering, are they at all concerned with the liability aspect in the business that they presently operate, that it might fall down? And, I was just concerned with the liability aspect of it all.
The risk and liability aspects include the inherent feebleness of the structure, as well as to the sightline traffic encumbrance that it is, both internally and externally.
Yeah, there's no question about the sight line. There's usually one, if not two, very bad accidents there a year because of the sight. So there's no question about that. It's just, with a frail old barn that's ready to fall over. That's, what I'm concerned with.
I would comment on that. In the normal case where I get something like this that's non-conforming to zoning and it cheats all the sidelines and the setbacks, normally the applicant is trying to build another structure to replace it with something. That's not the case here.
Right.
This is to be open.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm just curious about the liability, the responsibility of, well, first of the liability of if it was to fall down, that's the owner's responsibility, but it's also the responsibility to maintain it because it's a historical building. So if we were to remove it, it's gone forever. And I'm not quite sure if there's a responsibility to maintain a historical structure and what that really means, to the owner, or if there are grants that are available to help him restore it. So I don't know if there's a conversation to be had, around that aspect of responsibility to maintain a historic structure.
There are hundreds of law review articles which Commissioner Adamowitz get into that. And the value consideration is what burdens can a community place on an individual or an owner and what controls do they have over their property? And I don't think you want to start going barn to barn in Simsbury and start talking about that. I mean, farming is a difficult business. It's not a highly profitable business. You survive season to season. And to me, Rosedale Farms is like an oil painting when you come down that hill. And the cost and expense and who's going to pay for it and who's got grants for it, if you want to start imposing those conditions on farmers in Simsbury, there's a lot of reasons why not to. And that's why I say, your board has considerable powers. And there are a lot of law-reviewed articles about that, but most of the courts uphold you. And the real power of a community historic commission is to be able to make a value judgment. And if you need the structural engineering information, or you need the cost of construction and what the value of a farm is when you're done with it, for that, we'll try to get you that information. But ranking the properties historically on that property, this is the least historic. I mean, something built 2 years ago could be historic. I mean, and your charter and the statutes talk about that. But I hope you'll look very closely at this, and I hope you'll look at the condition and the lack of significant historical value.
It just seems that, that's a simple solution, to remove it, to demolish it. I think it's worth the time and the value to research it a little bit more, to see what our options are. Once it's down, it's gone forever. And you talked about an oil painting picture of the farm. Well, that's a component of it.
May I ask, this is actually for the board, because I was not on the board when the application, for the prior application to replace the roof, and it's my understanding, wasn't that denied by the board?
So the application that came before us was to put an architectural asphalt shingle roof on the barn. And
No,
That's not true.
oh, I'm sorry. Excuse
Margaret,
me. I misspoke. It was a metal roof. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So sorry about that. Yes, Marshall wanted to have a standing seam roof similar to the one that is on his other barn that is in the further back in the field. The one that's painted with the vines. So that barn that is set back in the fields is not in the historic district. So we did not have any jurisdiction over the type of roof that was put on it or anything. And the decision that was made at that time for this barn was that the metal roof was not appropriate for this structure in the district. And what we did approve were two options, I believe. And somebody tell me if I am misspeaking. But as I remember it, we approved either an architectural shingle roof or to replace the tar paper that's on it now. So there was an option. There was a more costly option and a more moderately priced option. And I don't believe that anything has been done to the roof since that application.
Where does a
came
metal
before us.
roof option fit into those two pricing options, the two you offered?
I believe it was in the middle, but I would need the applicant to speak to that. But there's a lot of discussion to be had over price, and we can have that. But right now, we're talking about what is appropriate for the building. So we offered two options for an alternate roof for the structure 3 years ago.
Yeah, I just look at it as they did come 3 years ago looking to put a particular type of roof on that was denied. And in some ways, this demolition application now is somewhat a consequence of the decision of the historic district at that time.
Agreed.
Well, but actually, I would say it could be the result of the decision not to put any roof and to do any repairs at all on this roof in the past 3 years.
Could I possibly interject at this point?
Please.
The way I see it is, so you have an application to dismantle, demolish the existing barn, and we have some pictures that I really think that the board would benefit having, if I can arrange Henry Miga to go out there, the building official, and do an assessment of this barn, whether structurally this is unsound and past the point of no return. And I lean towards Henry. Obviously, he's our building official, but more importantly, we just did that for the barns up at Meadowwood. So I know he can assess such structures, and more importantly, it appears to be similar construction of what we were dealing with up in the north end of town. And I would ask that maybe, this is the board's decision, that you keep the public hearing open, and I get a report from Henry for your next meeting to really do an assessment of the structure itself. Like I said, is it unsound? Does it need to come down? Is it a life safety matter? And then we can have the discussion on, does life safety outweigh the need to preserve it? You know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm not making a statement on either side of that. It's just more of I prefer to have Henry's assessment of the structure first.
I actually agree with you, Mike, having looked at it, and I went and took a look at it today, and I think that's a very good idea.
So,
I'll just say I don't feel at all equipped to make a decision today with the information that we have. And I would like a third-party review or some kind of analysis done on the condition.
right. I think that's a great idea. Diane, did you have any questions or points you want to make?
Just kind of an observation. If we want to have someone look at it, I agree, but I've looked at it firsthand, and especially, I guess it's the south side looks really scary. I mean, the roof looks like it's going to fall in. But I think we also have to look at the broader picture. Rosedale Farm has done an awful lot in terms of preservation. In general, there will be no development on that land. They have preserved barns. They have done an awful lot to maintain the character. What makes East Weetog Street is this wonderful agricultural historical area, and I think Rosedale and Marshall have done an awful lot to help. I had a 50s construction barn on my property that had been thrown together and was falling down, and we were approved to take that down. So I'm sympathetic to what Marshall is going through. A 50s construction is not necessarily the same as a 200-year-old post and beam. I also think if we start imposing restoration, one of the things, and I'm going to go back, I'm going to go back in history. When the historic district started, we wanted to maintain the character of the neighborhood, but we didn't want to be onerous. And we have to be very, very careful about inflicting economic onerousnesses, if that's a word, on the people who have done so much to keep our neighborhood the way it is. And that's why we exist as a historic district, to maintain the character, and it's a neighborhood. When we were talking about the barns, I'm sorry, Marguerite, I can't the names again that we agreed with the historic tobacco barns, with Martin Luther King and all of that. There was money paying for all of that. There were all these grants coming in. Now, if you're, Marshall's in the middle of trying to help a farm survive. And if we start inflicting these restrictions, what are we doing in terms of maintaining our neighborhood? I think it's counterproductive. So, I mean, again, look at the barn, do what you need to do. But to me, I get nervous about the house that's right next to it that is going to fall on top of them. I got to be honest, but I'm not an expert. I'm just looking at it. And again, there are an awful lot. There are a number of other barns on the property that are looking good. So, and that's all I have to say. We have to be careful. We have to be very, very careful, because I think what TJ was saying is correct. We have a lot of power in our hands, and it has to be used appropriately.
Diane, I couldn't agree more with all that you said.
And I'm right with you. On my property, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, I did have historic barns removed because they were in such disrepair, and which was approved. Yeah, so.
That's interesting. That was before my time on the commission, Patty. I did not know. So it sounds like we've already had some losses between barns on Diane's property and barns on Patty's property. We've already seen some loss of barns. I want to say I value Rosedale Farms very much, both as it contributes to this district and as it contributes to the town. I love shopping there. I understand it's, a really hard year. I understand it's always a hard year for farmers. Agriculture is a very, very difficult business. And it is not the commission's intention to be onerous. But I think that Mike's suggestion to table this until December is a good one, so that all of the options for this barn can be examined. Because as Peter says, once it's gone, it's gone. It's not coming back. We've already had some losses. This is, its location, right on the street, may not be ideal, but it's also an icon on that street. It's a really, well-known and lovely building. It may not be the oldest barn in the district, and it may not be the most well-built, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't value it and take some time to think hard about, what condition it's in. Can it be stabilized so that it can be kept safe? Buy us a little time, maybe put a tarp on the roof to keep further deterioration. So I just like to, explore some options before we say that barn has to come down. And I do agree also with what Peter said about how, living in these buildings and on these properties it's a privilege, and it is a responsibility too. So I wished, that there had been some protection of this building kept on it over the past 3 years so that it would not have deteriorated to the point that it is now. I would also like to point out that there could be some resources for you to look into. Take a look at Preservation Connecticut's website. They have a circuit rider program where preservationists can come out. There are some folks there who are very well versed in barns. I'm sure that they get these kinds of calls regularly, and they may be able to be a resource for you. I can also point you to a couple of structural engineers who are very well versed in historic barns. Structural engineers are like, contractors. There are some who are very familiar and comfortable with historic structures, others not. So we want to make sure that whoever does look at it, really understands what they're looking at it, so they can give you, an appropriate evaluation of the barn, and what repairs might be possible and what those costs might be, just so we have all of the information to make a decision.
We consent and are very happy to go off to December if that's what you wish, Madam Chairman.
I think it would be a good idea to have some more time and bring some more information regarding this, the condition of the barn and options for potentially at least stabilizing it for a time. Any other comments?
I have a question. If we as a board decide right now to prolong an answer to this, and because the barn really is in very poor condition, and if something was to happen with the barn and someone was to be injured, where does the liability then lie? Does that lie on the town because of the board not allowing the demolition, or what's the repercussions of that?
That's a question for the town.
I'd have to ask Bob DiCrescenzo on that one. My opinion would be is that we asked the building official to review this, and I was going to put this as a priority to get Henry out there next week, just for the fact that this is a really, really unsafe situation, and Henry says, no, that's got to go, we would probably call it a special meeting of this commission prior to your December meeting. And I would, in that case, would like Henry to be present, not just in writing, but physically be here to explain the severity of the situation.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have further questions or comments? And if not, Mike, do I need to make a motion to table this to next meeting?
Yes, why don't you table it to your next meeting? And I'll give you the date right now, unless for some reason we have to hold a special meeting. Your next meeting is December 3rd. But with the caveat that, if a special meeting is required based on the opinion of the building official, we will hold a special meeting prior to that date.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so I will make a motion to table application 20-07 regarding dismantling a barn at 25 East Weatog Street until our next regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, December 3rd, unless the town notifies us that earlier action is required. Does that work, Mike?
Thumbs up.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? I'll do a roll call. Julie,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Patty,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
and Peter.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We'll stand by and we'll take any communication you send through your staff.
Very good. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Marshall, I'll be seeing you soon.
Okay, just call me when you want to stop by, or I guess you just stop by.
Yeah, I'll coordinate with Henry and we'll call you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, next item on the agenda is general commission business, updating the handbook. Did you have anything, Mike, on this?
No, we're on for next week, a week from today. Notices should be out in the mail. People should be starting to receive them if you haven't already. I don't know, Patty, Diane, Heather, have you gotten anything in the mail yet?
No.
It'll be just okay. You should be receiving them. It'll be a card with a notice and a link. The Zoom info will be on that card when you receive it. And we've identified it's every structure or every property within the historic district will be getting that notice.
Fantastic.
So I think we're going to try to get interest in the meeting. Hopefully we have members of the public here.
I really hope so, because I feel like, many people don't find out about us until they go to do something in their property, and then they find out, and that's just a kind of a rough start for all of us. And it would be great to get people more involved and understand how the district, is a benefit to property owners as well as sometimes feeling restrictive.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So, Julie, I know you said you might not be able to make it. Are other commissioners able to be here to attend next Thursday for that meeting?
Same time, Marguerite? 7:00?
I believe so.
Yeah, I can be there.
Yeah, and I should be able to attend.
I can as well.
Great. Peter, I don't know if you have interest in attending, but we would welcome you as well if you were interested.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that's moving along. That's great. Any other general business?
So I know that the commission, I think, Julie, you asked about historic properties and the authority of the commission about historic properties in general throughout the community. I've asked Bob DiCrescenzo, I'm waiting for a written opinion from him, basically analyzing the statute in outlining the steps to establishing a historic properties commission. So meaning you can review stuff that impact other historic structures in the community, such as, you're talking about the Foster's ice cream demolition. So you have a little more, you're involved with that aspect of preservation. So I'm hoping that maybe by the December meeting, I'll have that written opinion from Bob and we can discuss that. I also discussed with him the issue with the residency requirement in the ordinance versus the statute and that conflict. He's going to put something together and we could possibly send that along to the Board of Selectmen to address that issue.
That's great.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Did we have any other issues for the attorney? Oh, yes. I think it was Heather who had mentioned she had raised the possibility of an appeals process, which is not something we have had.
Yeah. Okay. I'll follow up with Bob. We have a legal meeting scheduled in 2 weeks, appeals. I'll ask him because the statute is kind of silent to a local appeal. Really, the appeals are the action of your commission to Superior Court. So I'll ask him whether he has anything that would provide for a local appeal process, or is it just strictly statute, go to court?
Mm-hmm.
I know that the handbook for historic district commissions and historic property commissions in Connecticut on connecticut.gov on page 20 states that each historic district has to have an appeals process, and it's through the judicial municipality of the town. So I just took that as something that probably would have been addressed at the time that the district was set up, but I'm uncertain of that, obviously.
Yeah, I have no memory of them ever talking about an appeals process, to be perfectly honest. It was a long time ago, but that was, I don't think they considered that.
So Diane, because here's just a thought, maybe why it never came up. The building official is identified as the actual staff enforcement officer for this commission in the ordinance. And I just wondered, because if it's actions of staff, to appeal Henry's decision or action, someone can go to the building board of appeals. So it may have been just for the fact that there's other avenues available for appeals. I know, I'm just
not a clue. I'm just kind of responding to Heather's observation. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that there was any great thought put. It's more like there was not thought put into it. It was just never. I suppose if someone were denied, they could come back with another application. I don't know what the thought process was.
Yeah, I'll then, when we meet with Bob at our legal update, I'll bring this issue up to him and just say, we're kind of like at a loss and just would like clarification. Like, should we include this as we're updating our handbook? Point me to some place, because I know he's had to cross his path at some time in various communities that he's worked in or has represented this issue of an appeals process for an historic district.
Yeah, and again, just from a historic perspective, no pun intended, I don't know that anyone has ever wanted to appeal. People, we have denied so few applications, truly, over the course of the historic district. And I don't know of anyone, some people came back and revamped applications and things like that, which is, kind of an appeals process, if you will. It's kind of a meeting of the minds halfway, but it's never really been an issue. But I'm not saying I don't think there should be appeals process. I'm just saying we've just never really encountered an issue with not having one.
Well, I agree. It would be obviously, I'm sure, a very rare occurrence, but I just didn't know if it should be something that should be addressed in the handbook, since I did see it in that handbook. And it's actually page 21 that talks about it, but I was just curious.
I mean, if it's,
Okay.
and again, if it's something that we're required to have, then we should be doing it if we're redoing the handbook.
It says appeals are made to the Superior Court for the judicial district in which the municipality is located. So that's only how it's addressed.
Well, I think that's what Mike just said is the protocol.
Yeah.
To go to the Supreme
Yep.
Court.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
that is-
The
So it
Superior
is in
Court.
place. Okay, so that sounds like it is in place.
Yeah, because then oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I just have a question about, what's the authority of the commission? I mean, do we have the ability to stop a project, or is the commission's ruling an opinion, and that opinion gets passed on to, say, for instance, the building permit? So when he applies for a building permit for the demolition of the structure, the Historic District Commission voted against it. But what's the true authority of the commission? Can we actually stop a project?
You have, under statute, you have regulatory authority to a certain extent. So you're not advisory, you have regulatory authority. So in a sense, can you stop a project? You could if you denied an application for certificate of appropriateness. That's your action of stopping a project. And and also there you have in your handbook, there's mentioned about the enforcement, et cetera.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying.
So, I've been serving on the commission for, 4 years, maybe longer. I'm not sure, for a long time. And it is true, as Diane has said, that we try really hard to work with the property owners in this district, not to be onerous. We really do. And we have worked, to modify new house designs. We do try. On the other hand, we are stewards of this district too, and it is our responsibility to protect the character-defining features of this district. And that's something that I feel is being potentially threatened in the past quarter. We've had two applicants come before us, one formal and one informal, requesting demolition. And I feel like this could be, a trend that continues. It's a desirable place. People want to live here. Property values are going up. There's a little more vacant land, but then there's also, small houses in this district that people are going to want to tear down and build new. And that's something that we really need to grapple with as a commission. And kind of come to an understanding. What is it that we're preserving? Are we just preserving the nice big old houses, or are we preserving everything that contributes to the character of this district?
Well, I think we also have to be aware, Marguerite, if someone wants to tear down a small cape on a small piece of property, we're not going to approve a McMansion going up on a small piece of property. And we've, what's appropriate on a small piece of property. Think about some of the other applications. There's one in particular that we can think about that we had to discourage because of mass, et cetera, et cetera. So to tear down, and I'm not saying I'm in favor of tearing down a small house, but given that example that you just did, I don't know that we would ever approve a big house on a tiny lot. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And I think we have to, it's really, really important to take each application on its own merit. Again, we've discussed this before. Each is very individual, and we have to take the individual circumstances and applications. Otherwise, we do a disservice. Then that we just have a rubber stamp of yes or no, and that's not what we're here for.
I agree with Marguerite. I think she has made some very valid points. I think I also Peter's comments about sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I think that when Peter's comment, when something is gone, it's gone. There we go. And I have to admit, I'm feeling a little bit discouraged about some of the conversations that have been happening in the past couple meetings about what's worthy and not worthy of preservation in this district. Everything in this district is worthy of preservation. It's all part of the character. It's worthy of consideration for preservation. It's part of the character. It's part of the evolution of this district. And to Marguerite's point, we are the stewards. This is our responsibility to make sure that we are preserving the integrity of this district. We do evaluate things on a case-by-case basis, but I think that when we start talking about, well, it's only 60 years old, it's not historic, I think that is not what our charge is. It is 60 years old. It is historic. It's in this district. It contributes. It's part of the character. So I do take exception with some of that conversation. This thing with the barn, I'm not convinced that they know the age of that barn, and I think that. This is another conversation where I think having more information would be helpful. Another issue where having more information would be helpful before we make a final decision.
I just have one comment. Are we live right now, or is this a private meeting?
We're live.
Mike, would it be appropriate for us to send some potential resources to either Mr. Donahue or to Mr. Epstein, like a link to the Connecticut Preservation Connecticut website? I'm
gonna meet with them, both with Henry, but also
Okay.
I'll try to nudge. But I think we shouldn't continue this conversation about a continued application outside of the hearing process.
Very good. Point well taken. Okay. All right. Well, the last thing on the agenda for this evening is approval of the minutes of the October 1st, 2020 regular meeting. I made some minor wordsmith corrections and sent them to Karen. Does anybody have additional corrections or that they want to raise? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes per the edits that I made to Karen today. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, got a second from Diane. All in
And
favor?
Patty.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, and so we'll do a roll call to approve the minutes. Julie?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Patty?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
And Peter?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. Without further, yep.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, this should have come earlier. I just have a quick question for Mike. It's my favorite topic, the signs.
I got to follow up with Tom Roy. We have two other things we're meeting on. He was supposed to put a job order out for that
Okay, thank you.
to get it repainted.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Okay, I'm done, Marguerite. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night, and
Thank
I hope
you.
to see you all next week.